There is a good chance, I'm gonna be real careful about it, but there's a really good chance that I'm gonna call this dirt when I really mean potting soil. But work with me. Happy Saturday. We are talking dirty today. All right, calm yourself. We talking houseplant dirt. Okay, so I lovingly call this stuff in my pots dirt. But in all actuality, it's not really dirt. Dirt or soil is different from potting soil. So I want to talk about what those differences are, the purpose of houseplant soil, does it last forever? And lastly, I want to talk about a game changer, and that is customizing your houseplant soil. So let's get into it. She's looking really, really cute today. Okay, so like I said, I lovingly call this stuff in my pot dirt, but it really is not dirt. And I want to read the definition of dirt because I want to be clear, right? I want to get the definitions out of the way because I probably will interchange the words, but I want you to know what I mean. I want us to be clear on what I mean by when I say soil or dirt. So dirt is commonly referred to as earth, or dirt is a mixture of organic matter, minerals, gases, liquids, and organisms that together support the life of plants and soil organisms. Sounds like a beautiful symbiotic relationship, right? If you think about it, it's the trees and the leaves and the bark, and it's animal poop, and it's all the things, all that living matter, it breaks down, and that broken down thing feeds another set of living matter, and then that broken down thing feeds another set of living matter. And before you know it, we have this organic, rich, nutrient rich, dense, earth gold. It literally is the thing that it feeds us all. It is the nutrients that help us to grow good food, and especially in our case, grow good plants. Now, it sounds like the perfect thing we would want for our plants in our homes, right? But to be fair, we don't live outside. Well, I don't live outside. So I will say that all of those things need to be in place in order for that to work well. And because I don't have the level of sun, the heat, the water, the rain, the wind, the animals, the microorganisms, the bacteria, I don't have all of that in my home. There needs to be something different in my pot because that would not work inside of our home. I don't know what that word would be where it functions as the same thing, but it's not exactly the same. Fake soil? I don't know. Anywho. And so houseplant soil mimics real dirt in the sense where it provides a nutrient source. It creates an anchor for the roots, right? And it provides it allows water retention and air circulation, and it is made specifically for container gardens. I'm pretty sure it's obvious now why we can't use regular soil inside of the house. We just don't have the conditions that would allow real soil to do what it would do outside. So before we move on to the different kinds of houseplant soils, let me introduce myself. My name is Yvette Boone. I'm a recovering software engineer and a lifelong creative hobbyist and a plant enthusiast. And here on this channel, we create a safe space for Black women to incorporate creative hobbies into their wellness practice. And for me, it is plants. And I love to get my plants to be nice and lush. And for that, I start with its foundation, which for me is the soil. Now, I mentioned before that I didn't really know why we call this soil, but the truth of the fact is that we call this potting soil because you don't have to grow your plants in potting soil. You can use other mediums to grow your plants in. This is the one that, excuse me. This is the one that looks and acts like soil the most. But you can also grow your plants in water. You can grow them in leca. You can grow them in like lava rock or like mineral rock, pond, all sorts of media. In fact, I think I'm gonna go out on a limb and say that if your medium, if it provides a nutrient resource, if it's support for your roots, and if it allows for air and water, I think you could probably grow your plant in anything. So I haven't experimented too much on different mediums. I have used leca. I have used what we call soil, and I definitely have used water. There are some other ones that I would love to try. I just haven't tried yet. I think I have tried like a ceramics, which is sort of like a lava rock. I've tried those and they work all pretty well, and they pretty much they pretty much all work the same. So the real tea is, does it last forever? Unlike organic soils like we have outside that breaks down, some of the inert soils don't break down as quickly, but because these are all natural, at some point they will break down. And the breakdown of the materials, what happens is that it breaks down into such small particles that it ends up reducing the amount of airflow, and it becomes so dense that the roots can't get all of what it needs, right? So that usually is what the problem is. It never expires, or it's like, oh, this is no longer any good. So in all actuality, you don't ever have to get rid of your soil. What you would do is you would then take it and maybe refresh the soil. So should you ever repot or replace your soil? I would say yes. The books, if you go and Google online, they'll tell you that you could replace your potting soil every 12 to 18 months. I have been growing plants for years. I have never done it that often. I will replenish the soil. I might take the bottom half of the soil off, put some new soil on top, or just take the root ball out and shake off the soil. Take the remaining soil, add some new soil in with it, stir it up, replenish the soil or refresh the soil. But I don't necessarily get rid of it, because soil is not, unless something is wrong with it. So let's go over some of the things that might cause you to want to replace the soil. If you like this content, don't forget to hit that like button. And because you like this content, you would absolutely love our community. Hit that subscribe button, and for a deeper connection, just sign up for my newsletter. Link is in the description. All right, let's get back into it. So if your soil is compacted, meaning that there's no air flowing through it, and if it gets water, it holds it forever because there's no air to be able to dry it out, that would be a good reason to replace your soil, aka refresh it. Or if you've got mold or you've had a pest infestation, I would then replace the soil. It would not be worth it to reuse that soil. Now, that's a whole other video on how to replace, how to refresh and how to reuse soil, but it's a thing, right? You don't necessarily have to take your soil and just throw it away. Now, there are some caveats to that. Now, if you've used some systemic, bug killer, pest killer, you might want to be really careful about disposing of your soil out in the elements, because you don't know how long those chemicals will last and what it will do to the environment outside. We want to keep that environment going because that's nature. What we have in our home is a little different. Okay, so now the fun part. We talked about, do we ever need to replace it? And we talked about the difference between garden soil and potting soil. So now I want to talk about the game changer. Should you ever make your own soil? So let's start by saying the easiest thing to do is to go out and purchase some potting soil that's already pre-made. A lot of the potting soils that are already made are really good, right? They have all the things that you need in them. You don't really have to go out and purchase anything else to amend to the soil. This is my caveat though. A lot of times they come with the slow release fertilizer in them, right? And what I have found is that over time, that slow release fertilizer tends to weaken, right? Now, how often do you know how old that soil is, right? So not only do you not know the age of the soil when you purchase it, but you also don't know, you keep the soil for how long? Do you write the date on the bag that you purchased it? So I personally, even though I have used prepackaged soil plenty of times, right? I tend to stay away from them because, and this is not prepackaged soil, by the way. I tend to stay away from them because I find that I have less control over what my plant is getting fertilized with. And that adds an element of surprise. And when I'm trying to break down why my plant may or may not be doing well, I have a level of unknown that I just, have to chuck stuff up to because I don't really know what's in it. So I personally like to amend my own soil for several reasons, right? So I do want to start off by saying that there is no shade in using pre-mixed houseplant soils. Nothing wrong with those. The only thing I find, the only kind that I really have, well, there's a couple of kinds. It is a little expensive. But you're paying for the convenience, which, like I said, absolutely nothing wrong with that. And I've used them in the past. Here lately, though, I have been mixing my own soil. Now, in the beginning, I was like, God knows, why would I do that? But here's the real tea. The game changer is customizing your soil to fit not only your plant's needs, but your personality. For instance, if you know you are an overwaterer, you can add amendments to your soil that allow more air circulation, right? If you have a base mix and you added even more things in it that allow more air circulation, you can water your plants in a way that fits your needs, and the plant can get what it needs too, because like I said, it needs air and water, right? If you're an underwaterer and you say, okay, now I know I like to water my plants. I can only water my plants every 2 months, right? You can add amendments to your soil that would allow it to stay wet and dry enough so that it can stretch out those 2 months. So, in the past, I told you, I've mentioned that I like to use bigger pots. And when I mean by bigger pots, I want my plants to be big enough to fit into bigger pots so that I don't have to water them as much. But you could also amend your soil to allow your soil to be able to keep up with your personality and your plant's needs. So let's talk about some of the amendments that I put in my soil, because I mentioned to you that I make my own soil. I'm making a mess too. Okay, so one of the things that I like to put in my soil is perlite. This is readily available at the stores, and what it looks like literally is some little white pebbles, some little white rocks. I'm gonna try to find some in some soil. It looks like a little white pebble, and these you can just break it down, and as you see, it'll just break down to just about nothing. Perlite is one that holds water, but it also allows for good circulation, and it tells you that right on the bag. Perlite is fairly cheap. You can get it just about at any big box store, and you can order it online as well. I will say that perlite comes in different sizes. So I don't have any just yet, but my next bag, because I actually purchased two big bags, and so I don't need any for a long time. But the next one that I do buy, it will be one of the larger size perlite. But this I love to add to my soil. This is worm castings. Now, worm castings not only help to allows some water retention in the soil, but it's also a nutrient source. It literally is worm poop. Okay, now this has been cleaned up, I guess. I don't know what you want to say. It's all natural. It has the NPK number on here too. And it literally is just worm poop, but it doesn't have a smell. It's not gross or anything. I mean, I wouldn't eat it, but yeah, it's pretty good. And it looks like dirt. It's just brown crumbles, right? It's okay. I don't want to take it out, but it's not gross. It really is not gross. I love to put this in with my plants, especially my peace lilies. Peace lilies is the only plants that I have that I don't really plant in my regular aeroid soil. I usually put it in a more dense soil, and I love to add this on top when my soil is pretty old. Like I said, my peace lily that I've had is the oldest plant I have in my collection. And I've refreshed her dirt maybe 4 or 5 times. And mostly what I do is I put soil on top and I add some worm castings in, maybe like once a year, something like that. And I just sprinkle a little bit on top. But this is a good amendment to add to your soil to not only give it nutrients, but to kind of help with water retention. Now this is the one that most people, upside down. This is the one most people are probably familiar with if you like to propagate. This is sphagnum moss, and it's you can buy it in a big dry block. Now, one thing I will say about purchasing amendments a la carte is that I like to purchase all of my things dried and in a block form. So that way I know there's no buggy boos crawling through there. There's nothing, no mold or anything growing, because it's not wet, right? It's not straight from outside or whatever. So it's been dried, sterilized, and all the things. This is sphagnum moss. I love to grow propagations in this, but you can also add this to your moss poles and to your soil. So if you have a plant that needs a little bit more to retain a little bit more water, or they dry out super quick, you can amend that soil with some sphagnum moss. You can cut it up and add it right into the soil. This is what makes up the base part of my soil. I used to use peat moss. Peat moss has a tendency to break down a little bit often, so you would need to replace that. Cocoa coir, from what I read, I've only been using it now for the last 3 or 4 years, but from what I read, cocoa coir breaks down a lot slower, and it's pretty much inert, like it doesn't have any nutrients. This is the cocoa chips. It is literally in a block form. You have to wet this to activate it, to make it fall apart. It literally is like, think of, this is gonna be gross. Think of sauce. You know, the pig stuff, and it's made in that gelatin, so it's like little chunks of pig stuff floating in the gelatin. It's similar to that. They've taken all the chunks and they've pushed it together and let it dry, and it's in this really big brick, and you have to wet it in order for the bricks to release from each other. So not only do I have this in chunk form, but I also have it in what they call pith. Pith is just the same thing as the chunks. It's the same material, still coconut husk, right? It's the husk from the coconut fruit, but it is chopped up into a very small, fine particle. This is pumice. Pumice is like a lava rock. You might be asking, well, what's the difference between pumice and perlite? Pumice and perlite serve the same purpose. The difference is that this is not going to break down like perlite does. And because it's a little more dense and heavier, when you water the plant, it's not going to rise to the top like perlite does. So they pretty much serve the same purpose, but those characteristics are different. So the one thing that I'm missing that I don't have right now, and I'm not going to buy until I actually finish my move, if I do even buy some, is charcoal. I like charcoal chunks because the charcoal chunks are bigger, and it allows for more aeration, and it helps to kind of clean the water or clean the soil So it prevents things from molding. But yeah, I love that. Now let's get into how which one of those things does the different things. So based on what I have or what I've shown you already. Oh, I don't have the vermiculite. I also have vermiculite too, but I don't have that. The things that I have in my, okay, so let me go back for a second and say the soil that I make is primarily for the plants that I grow. So a lot of aroid type plants. Pothos, not Syngonium, don't even try it. Synapsis, the jungle boogie, the aglaonemas, even the Hoyas I found, they don't have a problem with this soil. I have not had any problems with this. I have not repotted my succulents in this soil yet, nor do I put my African violets in this soil. However, I use some of the same amendments. I just don't make it up the same way. The amendments are the key to customizing your soil. Like I said, I start my soil with a cocoa coir base. There are some other things that I like to add to my soil that I don't consider it the soil. Diatomaceous is probably one of those things. I don't really consider it part of the soil. So it's a cocoa coir, a cocoa pith, the pumice or the perlite, the charcoal, the worm castings, and that's pretty much it. Yeah, that's pretty much it. I mean, and you can see what that looks like here. You can see on the top, you can see that there's some chunk bits. This is what the chunk looks like. It's pretty chunky. There are times too that I will add some orchid bark. I don't have any of that right now. I think I gave away my last bag, but I have some orchid bark. That some plants get that, some of them don't. But for the most part, you can see what it looks like. It's pretty airy. It's not as chunky as maybe something I would plant a monstera in, but it's pretty chunky considering I do also have smaller pots. If I had big pots, big 15-inch pots, I might even go with a chunkier soil because I wouldn't want that pot to stay too moist for too long. But what I love about being able to customize your soil is that you can play around with it and you can see if adding certain things to your soil is going to fit your lifestyle better or even be better for the plant. So with the things that I have, like I said, we needed to create a nutrient source. Our worm castings is our nutrient source, and I personally don't add much to my soil for a nutrient source. I use a liquid fertilizer. So when I water my plants, I feed my plants then. And that way I can control. I don't use a slow release. Like I said before, I don't use a slow release because I feel like I would never remember when I put that in. Right? Did I put that in last May before last? I don't know. Did I put the 6 month in, the 3 month in? So I don't fool with slow release fertilizers because I just can't remember. The way I fertilize or feed my plants is I feed them with the water that I give them. One thing I will say about the cocoa coir based soil is that cocoa coir can retain a lot of the salts, and that's where we get our nutrients from. It's from the salts that we feed them in these. It comes in a salt form, right? It's a salt. And so it'll retain a lot of that salt. So every once in a while, when I say every once in a while, I probably do it maybe 2 or 3 times, maybe even more a year. Definitely at least once a season. Is that one watering I will go through, and instead of watering my plants that week or month with nutrient solution, I will just water with regular water. And that gives the pot a chance to flush out some of those nutrients, especially because I like to bottom water. I will take them all in the bathroom and just run water through and let some of that flush out so that I don't allow the salts to build up too much. And because I'm doing that way, I won't have to refresh or replace my soil for quite some time because there's nothing really in there to break down. Now, the worm castings is the only organic material that I have in there, but other than that, I really don't have much that needs to break down. And so that cocoa core, as long as it stays fluffy and it stays nice and light and allows for the air pockets, which I have the pumice and the perlite to do that, then I'm golden. Okay. So yeah, that is the game changer when it comes to customizing your soil, is that you can make it fit not only your personality, your watering style pretty much, but your environment. If your home is very moist or warm, then you can amend your soil to allow it to hold water a little bit longer because it's so warm that it might dry it out too fast. Well, you can add more things like the pith into your soil to make it hold the water a little bit longer. So let's go back over really quickly the difference between garden soil and houseplant soil. Houseplant soil is made specifically for you to grow houseplants inside your house. If you try to use garden soil or dirt from outside inside your home, then one, you don't have the same environment. So you don't have the rain, the wind, the sun, the animals to eat up those things, to break it down, to poop on. You don't have that environment in your home. So if you try to use that soil inside your home, you would probably not be happy about that and what it would cause inside your home. So houseplant soil is a sterile, manufactured medium that allows you to provide nutrients to your plant. It creates an anchor for your roots to hold on to, and it creates a space where it allows water retention and air circulation to your plants. Houseplant soil is sterile, so it typically does not have any living organisms in it. It does typically, especially store-bought ones, provide some sort of nutrients in it. It's either a slow release formula or maybe even some organic matter. Some houseplant soils will provide organic matters like worm castings to provide an organic nutrient solution. You can amend your soil by adding things to it, such as perlite, pumice, cocoa core chunks, vermiculite. All of those things you can add to your soil to make it either have more air circulation or retain more water or add more nutrients to it. So you don't have to use garden soil to grow your plants indoors. In fact, I think you would enjoy this a lot more. So for those of you that are a little cringed out by having bugs in your house, you don't have bugs in your house when you use houseplant soil. And remember that houseplant soil is one option to grow your plants. You can use lava rock, you can use leca, you can use pond, you can use water to grow your houseplants. You don't have to grow them in houseplant soil. It's just that houseplant soil mimics the outside as closely as possible, and it gives us the best, what a lot of people feel like is the best solution to growing plants indoors, but it's not your only solution. So hopefully this has helped you today, and you also adopt the fact that in order to get your plants to be beautiful on the top, you kind of need to create a beautiful foundation for them to grow from the bottom. So if no one else has said it to you today, have a great day. Bye. Because I think it'll be clear. All right. So funny story, and I've said this before in a video. When I was an early on plant parent, in my mind, you know, this thing is dangerous. In my mind, I thought dirt was dirt. And so I thought you could just take the dirt from outside, put it in your plant, and everything would be fine. Oh, boy. Big mistake, okay? All right.